Good afternoon. Welcome to Peace Corps Response's webinar about our new application process and questions about applying for volunteering with Peace Corps Response. My name is Denis Illich-Saucier. I'm a recruitment and placement specialist with Peace Corps Response. I'm also a returned Peace Corps volunteer. I served with the 2-year program in the Kyrgyz Republic, and I was a Peace Corps Response volunteer in Comoros. I'm here with my colleague.
Hi, my name is Ashley Lenahan. I am also an RPCV. I served in Romania from 2010 to 2013. Denis and I are both recruitment and placement specialists here at Peace Corps Response. And what that means is that we are responsible for a set of positions, everything from posting the positions online, promoting the positions to potential applicants, interviewing and assessing potential candidates, and making the final decisions of who to invite to the different positions that we have open and available.
Great. And we're going to be talking today about our application process and ways that interested candidates can find positions, how to apply, and everything that happens after an application is submitted. So we'll go through some general information about the program and then the specifics of how to apply.
Just a reminder, if you have questions, there's a chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. So enter your questions there and we'll get to them towards the end of our presentation. There we go.
All right. Great. So we're here with Peace Corps Response, which is a subset of the Peace Corps program. Peace Corps Response started in 1996 as Crisis Corps, and the idea was to leverage the special skills, language experience, cross-cultural experience of people who had served in the Peace Corps previously to address immediate crises. Since then, the program has expanded and is no longer just responding to a crisis, but responding to any kind of specific need that's identified in countries where Peace Corps operates. We've had 3,000 volunteers serving in more than 80 countries, and our programs are a variety of different assignments that are specialized depending on the needs of the specific post request. So positions can range from 3 months up to 12 months, with most positions anywhere from 6 to 12 months. And they're with specific partner organizations to address needs in the Peace Corps program areas. The Peace Corps Response program has expanded beyond its origins, so it's no longer limited to just returned Peace Corps volunteers. Each position has specific requirements, and anyone who has the experience and the skills to meet those minimum requirements is eligible to apply. There's no minimum number of years or Peace Corps service required. It just depends on the listed requirements in that position. In addition, the Peace Corps Response program addresses some of the same big picture goals as the 2-year volunteer program. We want to help share technical expertise and build capacity in our partner organizations, share American culture with the communities that we serve in, and learn about the culture of those communities to share it with people back in the US. Peace Corps Response especially focuses on meeting specific short-term high-impact needs, building capacity in local organizations, and transferring skills to be sustainable beyond the period of the short-term service in Peace Corps Response.
All right, so we're talking a little bit about our newly redesigned system, and especially if you've been watching our website for a while, you might have noticed that our positions have changed on the website quite a bit compared to just a month ago. So going to our website here, if you wanted to find our currently open positions, you'd go to the Peace Corps Response section of the website, Scroll down to the middle, and on the right-hand side here, you'll see a blue box that says View Peace Corps Response Openings, Search and Apply. So you go ahead and click on that red button right there, and it'll take you directly to only Peace Corps Response openings. All of our openings will show up right away. So you can see we have 70 positions open right now. 1 through 10 will show up initially, and you can scroll through to see all of our open positions at the same time. Or if you're a little bit interested in seeing them in different orders, you can search by what has the soonest departure if you're looking for positions that are departing sooner rather than later. And you can see the earliest departures we have right now are in June. Or perhaps you're looking for a little bit later and you want to see what's the latest you could possibly get working. And right now the latest that we have available is October of this year. Perhaps you're also interested in seeing them by country, so we can group them in alphabetical order. Or if you're interested in particular countries, you go to the right-hand side of your screen and do the drop down for regions and countries. So all the countries listed right here are the ones we currently have open positions for. So if you do not see a country listed here, we do not currently have positions available. However, we might in the future. So be sure to check back or to contact us if you have additional questions. By clicking on any one of these boxes, for example, Liberia, you would sort to only the 11 positions available in Liberia. If you were interested in perhaps Asia or Central America and Mexican countries, you can click by region as well and see all the positions for the countries located in that region. If you weren't very interested in a specific country, but more so in a specific sector, you could also sort by education or one of our other sectors here listed on the right. So again, these filters are a great chance for you to kind of narrow down from 70 to, for example, 27 results, so you're not digging through page after page of current positions. So let's take a look at this Burkina Faso position for an example of a TEFL teacher trainer. So you would click on the title and it would take you to the main page of the position description. So you'll notice that there's a lot of information here. We have a short description of the project that this partner would like to accomplish, the name of the partner that you would be working with, the required skills for this position, and any particular medical considerations that you might want to take into account before you submit your application. On the right-hand side, we have a little bit more detail. If you're not sure where a country is exactly located, we have a lovely map that will highlight where the country is, as well as then let you know if there are any language requirements. So for example, Burkina Faso does have a French language requirement. It also let you know if there's more than one position available for this particular opening. So we are looking for 2 volunteers for this particular opening. And then you can also see that this is for 12 months. The departure date is currently listed as August 27th, 2017. But something to note is that our departure dates can be variable. Sometimes they do get pushed back or move forward just a little bit as is needed by the programming at the country. So perhaps the staff have a training and they need to schedule our volunteers to arrive around that training, or maybe there's a holiday and it would be better for the volunteers to come another week. Perhaps in the final clearance process, individuals need a little bit more time to finish their medical, and so the country might agree that they can accept the volunteers a week later, but generally the departure date remains pretty stable. It's not going to dramatically shift. So if then you were interested in applying to this position, you would just go ahead and click the big red Apply Now button, and it would take you to the screen to log into your profile if you already have one. Or if you don't have an account yet, you would have to click right here and create an account for yourself. So some things to keep in mind about looking at our positions is that you can use these filters or keywords to search. However, if you were used to our old website, there are no more search agents. This means you can no longer do a saved search of a keyword where it would send you a notice to let you know a new position was open. So you do have to actively check our positions. There are no more automatic notices to let you know of new positions that might fit your criteria. Additionally, we are now limited to 3 applications every 30 days. So previously, you've always been allowed to submit multiple applications, but we did not previously have a restriction. However, in this new process, in order to keep everything moving forward and more streamlined, we've limited it to 3 applications every 30 days. People often ask, how do we decide which of those applications do we move forward with first? And in Peace Corps Response specifically, we will contact you to ask your preference of order of consideration. So that means you are the one who does have to consider things like departure dates. If your first preference has a later departure date and your second preference has an earlier departure date, you might have to risk missing out on consideration for the second preference while waiting to hear back on the first preference. So that's some things you want to keep in mind as you're filling out those preference forms. When you're submitting your application, it is pretty straightforward and simple. It should only take you 30 to 45 minutes to complete. We collect basic information like your name, contact info, but in particular, your resume is extremely important. This is the primary document that we use to determine whether or not you are qualified for the position, as well as to compare you to other candidates in the pool. We see pretty often that people will submit a generic resume that has not been customized to the position to which they applied. We do highly prefer that you submit a customized resume. You can have up to 5 different customized resumes within your profile. So feel free to play around, and even if you're applying to multiple education positions, really try to target your application to those individual positions. Additionally, your resume only needs to be about 2 to 3 pages long. Submitting an application with a resume longer than 3 pages is generally not going to get a full review as much as the ones that have a more condensed and concise version of their experience and skills provided. Another new addition to our application process is the health history form. So this form you will automatically have to submit the first time you apply to a Peace Corps Response position. So once you apply to a position, you'll get an email asking you to log into the medical portal. This is a separate system from the application system. So we will never see anything about your medical history. It's entirely confidential. But you'll fill out this health history form and then receive a list of countries for which you are pre-cleared for us to consider you for. This you only have to fill out once every year. So you do not have to fill it out every time you submit an application, just the first time you submit an application, and unless more than a year has passed since the last time you completed the form. So with this health history form, as noted, it's an automatic email, and this is whether you recently applied to the Peace Corps Volunteer 2-year program, or if you've applied to the Peace Corps Response program. You only have to submit one health history form for either program, and you'll get a list for each program. So you have a list of countries for the 2-year program, a list of countries for the response program, and if you're a doctor or nurse being considered for the Global Health Service Project, you'll also get a list for the Global Health Service Partnership Program. As I mentioned, this is valid for 1 year. So no matter how many applications you submit in those 12 months, you just have to submit the one health history form. It's important to include only medical conditions in this form. So things such as dietary preferences should not be included in this form. Those are preferences that we can discuss later in terms of what's possible or available at the particular location of your assignment. It is important, though, to be really careful in filling out this form correctly. We do take your health history very seriously when determining whether or not we have the necessary resources, facilities, and health professionals available to support you medically during service. So just don't, click through everything and try to get it done as fast as possible. Really thoroughly look through all the information and fill it out very carefully before you submit it. Now, some of you will notice that perhaps when you apply, the list of countries you receive in return does not have the country to which you just applied. So there are going to be some restrictions that come out of your health history form, and unfortunately, these are absolutes. There's not really an appeal process at the moment, so if a country does not appear on the list from your health history form, then we are not able to consider you for that country at all.
Thanks, Ashley. So once you've submitted your application and completed your health history form, your application will be, you'll receive an automatic notification, and your application will be available for the recruiter for that position. Each position has one designated recruiter who is responsible for that position from beginning to end in the process. So the first step after your application shows up in our system is a review by an actual human being. The recruiter for that position will assess your resume, and the first thing they check is to make sure that you meet the qualifications for that position as listed in the summary that Ashley showed on the website. As she said, this is where your resume is especially important. You want to make sure that if you do have those specific skills to meet the minimum qualifications, that that's expressed clearly in the resume. There is an option on the website to use profile as resume, but we encourage you to upload a resume tailored to that position each time. If you pull from an old profile, it might not reflect the skills and experience that the recruiter will be looking for that position. When your application has been reviewed, if you are found to be qualified and the recruiter wants to advance consideration, then you'll be contacted for an interview. Our interviews are conducted by phone or Skype, and the recruiter will send you an email to schedule the time for that interview. When your interview is scheduled, you'll also receive a request to submit contact information for your references. This is important to submit before the time of your resume with your recruiter. After the interview, the recruiter will assess your candidacy, and the next step is contacting those references. So you want to make sure that you've given the full name, including title, and contact information for your references so that there's no delay in that process. Another step after the interview is that some candidates require some additional health pre-clearance. This is a review conducted by our medical office based on that you've already submitted. It's not required for everyone. It's a case-by-case determination that our medical office initiates as needed after the interview step. When your interview is complete, your references have been submitted, and the pre-clearance medical review has been completed, at that point, the reviewer will assess all of their qualified candidates to determine the most competitive and issue a provisional invitation. This provisional invitation depends on later completion of a full medical clearance and legal clearance. The timeline for invitations is different for each position, but generally 2 to 3 months before the departure date. It may happen that the process is starting sooner. So if you've applied well in advance and the recruiter interviews a strong candidate, invitations might come sooner than that. But in general, you should expect about 2 to 3 months before the departure date to have a provisional invitation. Once that provisional invitation is issued, you'll be asked to submit fingerprint cards and paperwork for the legal clearance. You'll also receive additional medical tasks from our medical office in the medical applicant portal, and you'll be completing paperwork to request a new passport and possible visa if that's required for your country. All of these are time-sensitive tasks, and you should try to complete them as soon as possible. There are listed deadlines, but if you submit something sooner, that allows us to begin considering that portion of your application or your clearance materials sooner. And if you wait until the deadline, that could cause issues if there's a follow-up necessary for some of the documentation that you've submitted. Once all of your clearances are through and we've received all of your documentation for processing your passport and visa, then you'll be set up for the pre-departure process. We begin making travel arrangements as soon as we have all of your passport and visa paperwork in order, and your travel departs from your home of record directly to the post where you'll be serving. There is no in-country or in the US staging before departure. Each individual candidate, or in the case of multiple positions that are departing at the same time, they will all travel independently and then arrive at post and have an in-country orientation with the Peace Corps staff in the capital city or wherever the Peace Corps office has located their training center.
All right, so important things to know is we often get asked, how long does this process take? Generally, we post positions online around 4 to 6 months in advance of the expected departure date, so quite a bit different from the 11 to 13 months that the 2-year program has them posted. As well as from the time you submit an application to the time you get on the plane, it could be anywhere from 3 to 4 months. We do work on a rolling basis for all of our assessments. So the sooner you apply to a position, the sooner we will start reviewing and considering your application. We do not have a cutoff date for applications. We have to issue invitations, as Denise said, around 2 to 3 months in advance of that departure date. So some of our deadlines can be a little bit variable depending on the specific country and the number of applications we're getting to each position. So sometimes you'll see a position disappear from the website earlier than that 2 or 3 month cutoff. And that's because we have either received so many applications we don't need any more, or we fill that position with qualified applicants already. So if you're thinking of applying to a position, it is always better to submit your application earlier rather than later, as waiting too long can put you out of the running. So if you want to learn more about Peace Corps Response, you can check out our website regularly. We do post positions as often as we receive them, so it can sometimes be on a daily or weekly basis. We'll have new openings available. We have a very active Facebook page as well, where we share a lot of content from our volunteers in the field, as well as about upcoming events, such as this webinar or other locations when we'll be on site around the US. You can subscribe to our Impact. This is our monthly newsletter that will let you know kind of different themes that are happening in Peace Corps Response, special or featured positions that we have available at the moment, and any particular stories that we think are great from the fields. You can also always reach out to us through email, pcresponse@peacecorps.gov. We are very active at responding to you, as well as call into our line at 202-692-2250. We try to we'll be answering that throughout the office. So if you ever have any questions, you want to know the status of your application, you want to get a little bit more details about something you saw online, definitely feel free to reach out to us. We also have open office hours every 1st and 3rd Fridays of each month. These are from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern time. It is generally better if you email us to set an appointment during that time. They sometimes get very popular, so it's best to have a preset slot for yourself rather than hope that we're available during that time period. And so now we're going to open it up to any questions. Okay, so I think the first question is, does the Peace Corps Response area of interest have to be the same as when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the 2-year program? And I would say no. So if you served as an education volunteer, you are not limited to looking only at education-related positions in Peace Corps Response. We do look at your application holistically. So we're going to look at all the experience you've had, not just your Peace Corps volunteer experience. For some people, they served 20 to 30 years ago and have had a very extensive career in a very different area compared to their volunteer service. So you are limited only to wherever you can meet the qualifications for that position.
And then additional question, so someone asked, what if I didn't serve as a PCV? What kind of experience are you looking for? This is something that varies from position to position. So each of our positions has a specific set of minimum requirements, and these can vary dramatically. So in some cases, we're looking for certain academic backgrounds and technical skills, a certain number of years of experience doing specific kind of work, different kinds of language skills. It's really important to read carefully through the position summary and the minimum qualifications listed on the website, because those are the core skills that are absolutely necessary for that position. So in order to consider a candidate, they have to meet all of those minimum requirements. But if they do, then they are eligible for that position. So it doesn't require having served in Peace Corps before. Often Peace Corps service is a valuable piece of the experience that qualifies someone for a position. But if you've met that minimum qualification in a different way from your professional experience, then you are eligible, and we consider all candidates equally, regardless of whether they've served before or not.
Okay, now what does the legal clearance entail? So the legal clearance entails submitting a questionnaire with some of your basic background information like name, date of birth, social security number, place of birth, as well as sex and some other identifying information. We submit that along with copies of your fingerprints, which you would have to obtain from your local police department or another fingerprinting agency. We submit those to the Office of Personnel Management, where they do a review and investigation of existing federal records, including criminal background investigation databases with the FBI, as well as some other federal agencies, to see if there are any previous records of criminal activity or other investigations on file. Sometimes the process can take a little bit longer because we are working with other agencies who have delays at the administrative level or are still busy responding to various requests for documentation. Sometimes the legal clearance comes through in a couple weeks. Sometimes it can be several weeks or a couple of tell you that your invitation is provisional because you're not guaranteed to complete the clearance process. Your invitation is contingent upon successful completion of legal clearance and medical clearance processes. So it is really important to submit that information to us as quickly as you can when we've sent you the materials and request.
And an additional point for that, so in the application process, you'll be asked about if there are things in your legal history. It's very important to be honest about those and declare those ahead of time. If you haven't declared something in your application and then it shows up in the background check, that's a serious cause for concern that could disqualify you from consideration for that position. So make sure that you list everything and give full details in your application if you do have some legal history that is relevant to your position.
Okay, so who created these Peace Corps response assignments and who has vetted them before you begin recruitment? All right, so all of our response assignments are generated directly from our partners in the fields. Peace Corps staff in each of the countries, if they're interested in having a response program, will contact their partners to let them know that the response volunteers are a resource that Peace Corps can provide. They work with the partners to develop a targeted position description. As you see, those positions are posted online. So the initial descriptions are a collaboration between Peace Corps staff in the fields and the staff at the partner institution. Those are then sent to our staff here at headquarters and reviewed by both regional staff, depending on which region the country is in, as well as our programming staff here. So we are looking to make sure that these positions are within the sectors that Peace Corps works in, and that the requirements for the position meet the needs of the position. So that is our review process. We do not initiate positions here from HQ. Those all have to be generated from the field.
And another question, on average, how many applicants are there for each position advertised? So this is a good question, but it's a difficult one to answer because the average is a little misleading. Our positions are very different. Some of them are highly specialized or have a combination of different unusual skills. And so some positions might have very few applicants because there aren't very many people that have the requisite skill set. And then other positions that have a little bit of a broader pool will attract a lot of different applications. Additionally, as Ashley mentioned before, we don't have a set period that we keep them open. It's based on the applications that we've received. So once we have received enough qualified applicants, we will often close the position, and that can be sometimes shortly after it's been opened if we receive a lot of qualified applicants very quickly. In general, though, our positions will have multiple qualified applicants for each position, and it's a competitive process to select the best fit applicant for each position.
I will also add on a point that we aren't looking just to fill anyone in these positions. So even if a position only gets a handful of people who apply, If we don't believe that any of those people is the best fit or the best match for that position in both terms of skill and ability and disposition and suitability, then we may decide not to fill the position at all. So sometimes you'll see positions reposted that we didn't fill during one round, or other times positions might be canceled either by the staff in the field because the partner had a change and can no longer support a volunteer, or because we felt that we couldn't find the right person for the job. So even if you're up against just a handful of other people, we are going to be very thoroughly vetting everyone to make sure that we get the best possible volunteers. Let's see. Okay, so this one, compared with several months of language and cultural training with the 2-year program, is there anything we should do before jumping into our assignment besides doing preparation on our own? Okay, so for those who aren't familiar with the 2-year program, they undergo a pre-service training that's around 3 months in country where they live with host families and attend daily classes with intensive language, cultural, and technical workshops. In response, your in-country orientation is targeted more towards just getting you briefed and ready to serve safely and securely in your country. So we focus more so on the administrative aspects of Peace Corps, getting your bank accounts and IDs established, understanding who to report to and how, understanding Peace Corps' rules and regulations in terms of safety and medical considerations. So there's not going to be extensive technical training. We do expect you to come in already with those technical skills. In terms of preparation, we do offer some courses as part of your pre-departure tasks that talk about cross-cultural integration and communication, as well as then some countries will provide reading material that they want you to review before you come in. Other countries will connect you with volunteers in the field to get you speaking with them and learning a little bit more about your assignment or site location. In terms of preparation, it's always helpful to know a little bit of the local language, even in those positions which don't have a language requirement, because you will be able to use English on a regular basis in your professional capacity. It's always helpful for community integration to just learn a little bit of the local language if you possibly can.
And I will emphasize, for those positions that do have a language requirement, that language requirement is there because you need to be prepared to come in and begin working in that language as soon as you start. So because we don't have a 3-month period of language training, if French or Spanish or another language is listed as a requirement in that position, it means that you need to be able to function at that level from the beginning when you depart to begin your assignment. And then we have another question about, do departure dates ever get moved forward? And if so, what happens if you are not able to depart on the earlier date? So this is a good question. Generally, our departure dates, if they do get adjusted, it's moving them back and not forward. And they don't generally get moved forward in any substantial way. They might get moved forward a few days if there are things like holidays, but we usually move them backwards rather than forwards. If there was a case where the departure date was changed and you were no longer available to depart on that date, the recruiter is your primary point of contact for any of those kind of changes, and they would work with you to figure out what the options are. But generally, a date being moved forward is not as much of a concern as possible later departure dates.
I'd say it's pretty rare for our dates to move forward after you've been invited. Before the position has been filled, the date is a little bit more flexible, but because we know there a certain amount of time is required to do the legal and medical clearances, to have passports and paperwork processed, it's very rare that we would move a date forward after someone has been invited. And if the country needed to, we would consult with the invitee to determine whether or not it would still be possible for them to move forward. So it's a little bit of a negotiation after you're invited. But it would never jump so far forward as, say more than a week at most.
Yeah.
All right, so can I apply for both PCV and PCR at the same time? And the answer to that is yes. So you can have one active application with the PCV program, as well as then 3 active applications with response program at the same time. You will only be asked for your preferences to be ranked in the response program. And moving forward, it will kind of depend on who reaches out to you first. During your initial interview with whichever side, you can express to them if you have a stronger preference for a response position versus a 2-year position. But understand response is going to be typically moving forward faster because we do have shorter timelines and earlier departure dates compared to the programs and departure dates that the 2-year program is working on at this time.
And additionally, if you have questions about multiple applications, you should feel free to contact us and we can clarify if you've expressed a preference and you want to pursue one program or over the other. Communicating clearly with your recruiter is the best way to make sure that your preference is clearly understood.
Right. Are there any positions open for attorneys, Denise?
That is a good question. At the moment, we don't have any positions open for attorneys. We do occasionally have positions that call for some degree of legal background, but that's not a very common skill set for Peace Corps response positions. And in general, something that is specifically for attorneys would be unusual, but it's worth keeping an eye on the Peace Corps response website to see if a position is developed. We're not always able to predict in the coming months what kind of positions might be developed with partner organizations in the field.
I will say if you are an attorney, you can maybe take a look at your background and see if there are different ways you can apply your experience. I know attorneys sometimes specialize in different sectors, like for example, you might be specialized in environmental issues or policy, or if you have a stronger business background, for example, in contracts, in patents. I know I've sent people with a legal background who have especially worked in not personal property, but intellectual property controls, and they've gone into some of our technology related positions working with institutions who were interested in understanding the US patent process a little bit more and developing ways to protect their intellectual property. So when you're looking at positions, try to think creatively of how your background and skills might apply to those different positions. Don't look just explicitly for keywords that match. You know, like we're not going to have positions that say attorney or law or legal. Dig into some of the positions, look at the descriptions, and see if you have skills and experience that can apply to that partner's context, whether or not they're explicitly looking for someone with a law degree.
And additionally, when you apply, so one of the elements of the application is a job response question that asks you to specify what skills and experience make you an especially good fit for that position. So if you have something that maybe isn't clear in the titles for the jobs that you've held, make sure that you underline that so the recruiter can clearly see the skills and experience you have and how it relates to the position that you've applied for.
And as a general reminder, during this webinar, if you could keep your questions a little bit more general and applicable to the entire Peace Corps process, I think that'd be better for our audience right now. And if you had specific questions about your particular background or skills and how those might apply to Peace Corps positions, again, you are welcome to call us, to email us, to set up an office hours appointment, and we'd be happy to go through your resume with you and to discuss different options for you personally at a later time. So
another question we've received. Are all assignments in countries which have existing PCV programs? Yes, Peace Corps Response operates only in countries where there is already a Peace Corps 2-year program operating, and Peace Corps Response generally tries to align our positions with the same programmatic goals that the 2-year program, the PCV program, is working on in those countries. So there are no countries that have only Peace Corps Response.
And however, there are some countries with Peace Corps 2-year program that do not have Peace Corps Response. So if you're really interested in one particular country and you never see any positions with response, call us and double check to see whether or not we currently have an active response program there, as we wouldn't want you to be looking for something that's probably not going to come. All right, now, can a spouse accompany you to a PCR assignment? So spouses and couples get a little complicated with Peace Corps response. Because we are developing customized individual positions, it's more difficult to place people together. Right now, we do not currently permit one person to be the volunteer and one person to not be a volunteer together. So if you go to post together, if you go into a country, both of you have to be volunteers at the same time. You cannot independently follow your spouse into country. If you are interested in serving together as a couple, it's easiest if you find a country with a lot of assignments where there are 2 currently existing assignments that you both can match your background and skills to. That's the easiest for us to place. Occasionally, some countries are able to develop a second position for the other member of the couple. That is pretty rare and only typically happens in our larger programs. Just a few times a year, if that at most. And very rarely as well, sometimes if people have a very similar background, they can apply to the same position, and we might be able to expand that position into 2 different roles. But generally, that's a reversal of the process that we want to follow. We want to respond to needs in the field. So we want to respond to what the partners are asking, not asking our partners to create positions for us. So it does get complicated for couples. It can take a long time for couples to maybe find the right assignment for them in Peace Corps response. If you are really dedicated to serving together as a couple, it is easier to go through the 2-year program for that opportunity. Otherwise, response is going to take a certain serendipitous moment of multiple factors coming together in your favor for that to happen.
And additionally, if you are interested in serving as a couple, that's a particularly good situation to set up a time to talk to a recruiter, because there are some, in some countries, it's not possible for Peace Corps response to arrange 2 positions together. So you want to know ahead of time what your options are, and talking to a recruiter about your specific needs and what might be a good fit. That'll help you get more specific information rather than just waiting and hoping that 2 positions happen to pop up.
And one other quick note, if you are a couple, but only one of you wants to serve, that is completely fine. Just with the understanding that you would have to serve independently and your other half would have to remain at home. There are opportunities for you to visit each other. You do have annual leave days that accrue at a rate of 2 days per month of service. You can take these for either your spouse to come visit you in country and travel around together, or you can take that time off to go back to the US and visit with them. So there are opportunities to serve independently, even if you are a member of a couple or marriage.
Right. Another question, for our PCVs, do we have to complete the same fingerprint background info as persons applying for the first time? So for the legal clearance process, the fingerprint cards and background check, if you have served in the past and it's been more than 12 months since you completed your service, you do have to complete a new legal clearance process. However, if you are a recently returned volunteer and you're applying for a position that is within 12 months of when you completed your PCV service, then you have legal clearance already for the new position. So it has to be within that 12-month window that you are departing for the PCR position, not 12 months for the application date. If it's more than 12 months, then you will need to submit the new legal clearance paperwork a second time.
Yeah, and we do not keep your fingerprints on file. Those physical cards you fill out, we send right on to OPM and they don't come back. So we will need new copies of those to submit again for a new check. Unfortunately, we just don't have a database right now that can access previously submitted fingerprints. So that's why we do have to request them each time. As well, even if you are within that 12-month period since your previous assignment, if anything has changed with your legal status, you do have to notify us. So if there's a new civil court case, a new criminal court case going on in your background, you do need to let us know. Okay, so for can you be a PCR volunteer in a country you were previously a PCV? And the answer to that is yes, definitely. Understand that we do ask for references, and we often like to get references from staff and in the country where you previously served. So if you're interested in going back to that same country, we will likely be checking with the staff who were there if they remember you. But often the staff members love having their RPCVs come back. We have it happen quite often, and then you definitely have an edge in understanding the local culture and being able to adapt and readjust very quickly to being in that environment. So there's no limitation on your previous service and whether or not you can go back into that same country or same program.
Although additionally, the minimum requirements do still hold true. So even if you served in a country before as a PCV, you need to have the skills and experience listed in that position in order to qualify for Peace Corps response. So you might have served there before, but if you don't have the minimum technical skills, then you wouldn't necessarily be selected. Another question, what happens if I'm not selected for a position? Can I appeal the decision? So if you're not selected for a position, that can be for a variety of reasons. As we mentioned before, our selection process is competitive. So if you were at any stage in the process and you weren't selected, there is not a formal appeal process. It's like applying for any other job or other assignment. You can follow up if you have some questions to the recruiter, but ultimately the decision that was made about your candidacy is final, and there's not an appeals process.
So let's see here. Do you have any program that respond to emergency situations for shorter terms? I think you have more experience with that than I do at the moment.
So in terms of immediate disaster response, we don't have any programs that are kind of going in directly after an emergency for kind of very short-term humanitarian aid or recovery. But we do have some positions that are kind of in the middle and later stages of emergency response where the initial disaster situation has been resolved and Peace Corps Response has developed a position to help rebuild capacity in that country to be prepared for a future earthquake or typhoon or whatever situation might be relevant there. But those positions still fit into our general Peace Corps response timeline, so that this would be something that's several months in length and is really focused on building capacity to respond to future disasters rather than immediate kind of humanitarian aid recovery.
All right, now, can I make an application for you to have on file? So that is one of the changes with our new system. You are not able to submit a general application or drop off a resume in our system anymore. That used to be a feature in the previous system, but just due to the technology limitations, we weren't able to keep that in this new system. So you do have to submit an application to an actual position. There's no longer a way to just let us know you're interested through the application portal. If you wanted to connect with someone and talk a little bit about your background and whether or not there might be things coming up in the near future that could be of interest to you, that is definitely a case when you need to reach out to us by email or phone call, set up in office hours, share your resume with us directly through email, and we'd be happy to go through it with you and let you know if there are any opportunities that we foresee. But otherwise, it's really going to be incumbent upon you to regularly check the website for new positions. And this is also a great reason to sign up for our Impact newsletter. You'll be able to see a couple of the new positions on a monthly basis without having to go all the way go to our website and search through all the positions. So unfortunately, there's not a way to just drop off a resume right now, but you can send it to us through email and ask to discuss with our recruitment placement specialist.
All right, another question. What are some of the benefits, and are travel, room and board, or financial payment provided? So the Peace Corps response program, like the Peace Corps 2-year program, has full coverage of medical care during your service. Your housing is provided, and your travel to and from country is provided by Peace Corps. The goal is that you will be able to live in country on a level similar to the colleagues that you're working with, your local counterparts. So you'll receive a living stipend to pay for food, toiletries, basic supplies that's comparable to what someone that you would be working with at your partner organization. This is not something that will be enough to pay for expenses in the US, but the service should be kind of financially neutral. You won't have to pay anything to participate in Peace Corps response, and your living costs will be covered, but you won't be receiving enough that you could save and send money back to the US or make payments on loans, for example. Additionally, there are some costs at the beginning of the process. So when you're completing your medical clearance, there's reimbursement for many pieces of that, but most candidates will have to spend some money to get the medical clearance tasks completed. And where things are reimbursed, you still have to spend that initial money and then have it reimbursed later on. But in terms of the service itself, all of your costs in country are covered by Peace Corps response, and you also receive a readjustment allowance as a lump sum payment at the end of your service to help facilitate reintegration to the US. And that accrues at a rate of $450 per month of service. So it'll be a little bit different depending on the length of your PCR assignment.
All right, now, can I apply for a Peace Corps response if my qualifications do not exactly match the required qualifications online? This can vary because it will depend on the required qualifications. Sometimes there will be things listed under required qualifications that will say this is a benefit rather than a mandatory requirement. I'd say it depends. And this, again, is a case when you can reach out to us and ask to speak to the recruiter managing that position to see how exacting those requirements are and whether or not your background could be a fit for the position. For example, I've had cases where candidates were working in a different sector than the one that they were interested in applying to, but their skills from one sector to the next were cross-applicable. So, for example, monitoring and evaluation, if you've been doing monitoring and evaluation in the health sector, but you saw a monitoring and evaluation position in the environmental sector, and the position on our website requested experience in the environmental sector, you could reach out to us and say, hey, I have a lot of applicable skills and experience in this broader sense of monitoring evaluation. How strict is it that I need to have environmental specific experience compared to my own health experience? And we can let you know whether or not the partner would be interested in your background and skills. So we do have to meet the request of the partner. That is what we're always considering whenever we look at someone's application. So it never really hurts to reach out to us and ask if you don't want to apply right away.
And something to keep in mind when thinking about how your skills will fit with a position, because these are such short-term assignments, we are looking for a specific skill set because there isn't time to learn on the job. So we need candidates who are able to come in and immediately begin doing the work when they arrive in country. So if you have applicable skills and you're a quick learner, that's still not necessarily going to be a good fit for a Peace Corps response position because the timeline is quite tight and there's not an opportunity to receive training or learn on the job with a Peace Corps response position.
Now, can results of close of service medical for recent return volunteers check off most of the medical checklist in addition to post-specific immunizations?
So it's a good question, and it's, again, a little bit of a case-by-case situation. So there is no direct medical clearance produced from the close of service medical exam, but it's very important to keep those medical records because those can be used as part of the medical clearance process, particularly things like immunizations. If you've already received an immunization that's necessary for the PCR country that you've applied to, then obviously you wouldn't need to get that again. But it's up to the medical office to determine which medical documents they need and possible additional exams or tests that are required for the PCR country of service. So you'll complete your application and receive medical tasks in the medical portal based on your new candidacy, and you should be prepared to complete some additional medical clearance paperwork, even if you are a recently returned Peace Corps volunteer.
I just want to reemphasize that the medical clearance process, any medical information at all, is extremely confidential. We do strictly follow HIPAA requirements in terms of your personal information. So that means we never have any access to any of your records or the medical portal system where you're submitting information. That all strictly has to be discussed with the nurses and medical advisors in the medical office.
Great. Okay, another question. Is it possible to make changes to a resume I previously submitted? So within our portal, it's not possible to edit an existing resume, but it is possible to upload a new resume. So you can log back into the portal after you've created an account and upload a new resume. Or if you've been in contact by email with the recruiter and you have some additional information that you want to share with them by email, you can do that directly with the recruiter. In general, if it's a substantial change to your resume or you've noticed that there was something on there in error, uploading a new resume is the best way to go.
All right, so that was the last question that we have time for today, except it seems we got one more. So do PCR volunteers extend service similarly as with the 2-year program? I hate saying it's going to depend, but it does. It will depend on you, whether or not there is sufficient activities within the original scope of your assignment to continue doing, whether or not your partner can continue supporting you as a volunteer, and whether or not the Peace Corps staff feel there is still work that positively contributes to the original goals of the position. So it is possible to extend in a Peace Corps response position for up to the original amount of time of your service. So if your original service was 6 months long, you can extend up to an additional 6 months. If it was a 12-month assignment originally, you can extend up to another 12 months. Again, depending on all 3 of those factors of yourself, the partner staff, and the Peace Corps staff. And I think that is the end of our questions. We're just about out of time. So as a few reminders, if you want to get more information about Peace Corps Response or check out our website, those links are below this video. We are going to send out a link to the recording of this webinar once we have captioned the video. So that will be coming in the next couple of weeks. And then as always, if you have any additional information or questions that you want to seek out, contact us. Our phone number, our email are both readily available. And so thank you for joining us today. We look forward to receiving your applications, and we hope that you've learned a lot about response.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.